Hey, welcome to Radicalize Me. Today I wanted to do a little commentary on this meme game I found on Instagram. Here it is, Karl Marx or the Bible. I won't actually be playing the game, sorry to disappoint. It's called clickbait and it's a product of capitalism, so cry about it. But the idea is written in the meme here. There are a few quotes and you have to figure out if they come from Marx or the Bible. This is a pretty common format, and the idea is obviously that it's supposed to be hard to tell, which you can see if we look at the last slide. The big reveal is every single one is from the Bible. If you have even a passing familiarity with the Bible and Marxism, it's pretty obvious as you go through these quotes that they're all from the Bible. But I think it's worth talking about them because we have a society in the US where it's fashionable to act like you know what both of these things are about without really having read either of them. Or maybe you're a little more intellectually honest and wouldn't know the answer to all of these, but would be interested to learn the difference. So either way, let's do it. Oh, and one more preface. I, of course, mean no offense to the Instagram accounts I follow who posted this. You can see them there, antifascist.memes and Cocktails and Capitalism, both of whom post mostly really good stuff, and you should go follow them. I just disagreed on the usefulness of this particular framing. Number 1. Do not rob the poor. Proverbs 22:22. Right away, we run into a major problem with this framing of the Bible versus Marx. The Bible is mostly a set of parables and mythologies, while Marx was a philosopher, economist, and political theorist. Do not rob the poor is not the kind of sentence you're likely to find in any works of Marx, because contrary to popular belief, Marx never set out to make moral declarations. But right away, it sounds like something Jesus might say. It's not. It's actually from the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. This quote also represents the very different time periods in which the works of the Bible and the works of Marx were written. The oldest parts of the Old Testament are likely over 3,000 years old, while Marx wrote all of his works between 1848 and his death in 1883. The concepts of rich and poor date back a few thousand years at least, but capitalism, as far as we know, only emerged during the last 500 years or so, and Marx's concept of class struggle is barely 200 years old. Ironically, the study of Marxism teaches us that the material conditions during different time periods will yield different terminology and stages of development. So why would the quotes be similar enough to mix them up? Number 2, whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or gives to the rich will only come to poverty. Proverbs 22:16. Credit where credit's due. This one could almost be a Marx quote. It actually gets into the territory of class struggle. It mentions wealth accumulation and specifically the transfer of wealth from one class to another. And you could even interpret gives to the rich as the description of a class traitor. But again, Marx is less likely to use the word poor than he would be to say working class or proletariat, which are the more specific terms he popularized to better describe one's relationship to the means of production and wealth of society under capitalism. And to the extent that Marx and Engels mentioned poverty, it was in the context of class society and how poverty emerges out of capitalism. Number 3, a righteous man knows the rights of the poor. A wicked man does not understand such knowledge. Proverbs, again, 29:7. So right off the bat, we can say that moralizing words like righteous and wicked are unlikely to come from Marx. We again see the word poor and a strange use of the word rights. This one seems out of place in both Marx and the Bible. I'm not a historian, but I'm pretty sure the concept of rights was largely a product of the bourgeois revolutions of the late 18th and early 19th centuries, and thus wouldn't be of much use to Marx and wouldn't have appeared at all in the Bible. I verified all these Bible quotes, but this one had me suspecting a hoax, or at least some creative liberties. It's definitely a real Bible quote, but whoever wrote this meme actually used an older translation, it seems, to land on the word rights. But it's unlikely they did this to try and trick us, because Other translations, including the 21st century King James Version, use the word cause instead, which I think would make this quote's origin a little more ambiguous. Cause, in this context, could mean something like the source of the poor, like what caused poverty, which in Marx's case would be the oppression of the working class, or it could mean cause as in the political cause or the advancement of the working class. When this quote is understood as knowing the cause of the poor, that makes it a lot more Marxian and makes it a much more interesting Bible quote up for some interpretation. Number 4. Are not the rich the ones who oppress you and the ones who drag you into court? James 2:6. Here we go. Now we're in a more ambiguous area. Here we get into the rich oppressing the lower classes through the criminal justice system. And they drag you to court. Such visceral, violent language. But there are again some interesting alternate translations and interpretations here. First, there's a missing sentence. The full verse in most cases starts with, "But you have dishonored the poor," or sometimes despised or humiliated the poor. Then, some translations say exploit instead of oppress, which is very Marxist language. And in a version of the Bible called The Message, and this is according to BibleGateway.com, the line is, "Isn't it the high and mighty who exploit you, who use the courts to rob you blind?" Suddenly, this is a lot more radical. I didn't think this going in, but I'm starting to suspect that a lot of these translations the Bible has gone through over the centuries by elite clergy and leaders of various kingdoms and nations were intended to obscure the more radical messages in the Bible. Sounds kind of like everything. Number 5. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. Proverbs 22:7. This one is roughly the same across translations. We've been over the rich-poor thing a few times here, so let's look at the second part. Borrowers are the slaves, or servants in some versions, of the lenders because, as the great David Graeber said,
money is debt. Banknotes are just a bunch of circulating IOUs. Pounds are either circulating government debt, or they're created by banks by making loans. That's where money actually comes from.
So if money is debt, the ones in control of the money are in control of not only who is in debt, but they're in control of the indebted themselves. This explains well the capitalist system, especially in the US, where so many of us are indebted to privately owned banks and government-owned creditors like the student loan companies. Our government is even indebted to private interests like large purveyors of consumer goods like Amazon and Walmart, plus defense contractors, oil and gas companies, and mineral extractors to whom our government provides endless amounts of capital and infrastructure. This is in contrast to many socialist governments, and maybe even social democratic ones, who are indebted more so to their populations. This quote is also on the cusp, but with the context of the rich versus poor framing, it's just not quite something Marx would have said. Number 6. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. This one we can quickly dismiss. This is a quote from Jesus himself, a pretty well-known one, and has all the hallmarks of a Bible quote rather than an academic socioeconomic critique. Like we've seen a few times here, this statement is a moral imperative, but it's also a prescriptive command. Marx wasn't big on those. First, Marx would never tell you to give up your possessions because he differentiated between private and personal property, and when he did offer prescriptive actions, they were suggestions for how the working classes should organize themselves rather than asking for the capitalists to give up what they had, which he knew would never lead to revolution. Number 7. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. 1 Timothy 6:9. This one is interesting because it might be the kind of sentiment Marx would hold personally, if we had to guess, but I think it's also unlikely that it shows up in any of his work. This statement directs individual judgment or warning against trying to get rich because you might hurt yourself or others. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Marx believed something like this, but as Engels, who was Marxism's other half, wrote in Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, modern socialism is, in its essence, the direct product of the recognition, on the one hand, of the class antagonisms existing in the society of today, between proprietors and non-proprietors, between capitalists and wage workers, on the other hand, of the anarchy existing in production. Engels lays out his and Marx's modern or scientific socialism described above in opposition to the utopian pictures of ideal social conditions that preceded their analysis. Engels writes further, like every new theory, modern socialism had, at first, to connect itself with the intellectual stock in trade ready to its hand, however deeply its roots lay in material, economic facts. So he's saying that the philosophers of the day, meaning several decades before Marx and Engels, were coming up with this utopian socialism because the philosophy and the social conditions had not developed to the point where they could describe this material economic facts at the root of the problem they were describing. Hopefully that makes sense. We can extrapolate here that even earlier works like the Bible could have explored some of these socialist ideas and class dynamics through its contemporaries who were writing it, even though the social conditions did not exist to develop scientific socialism and the ascension of the proletariat. Okay, that got very theory heavy for a sec. Everyone okay? Let's rally. We've got one more Marx or Bible quote left. Number 8. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. 1 Timothy 6:10. This one is probably the epitome of the difference between Marxism and the Bible. Here, we're back to some of these ethereal, mystical concepts as opposed to the materialism of Marx. Evil is not the most useful concept when considering matters of politics and economics. It feels right to call Mitch McConnell evil or to call capitalism evil, but it doesn't really get us anywhere. Evil might be a topic for philosophers, but again, Marx's philosophy focuses on material reality and competing interests in society rather than lofty concepts that are worth study but may never have a definitive answer. The same goes for the love of money. It's something for scientists, philosophers, and theologians to seek answers to, but it's just not relevant to Marx's critique of capitalist modes of production. Thanks for watching. If you like what we do here, please comment, like, subscribe, and hit us up on Patreon if you want to become a contributor. Bye now.